We get scaled scores, percentile rankings, grade equivalent, our ZPD, our IRL, and our estimated WARF again, but the estimated WARF is only up to 4th grade, and I told you we'd get back to it, and we will, because there's a few of them that are off quite a bit. So I'm going to dig into each one of these score types and start rating the scaled score here. Now our range starts at 0 this time and goes all the way up to 1,400 in terms of our scaled score points. Here are the breakdowns. It's not nice, equal 100 points per grade level. Percentile rank, this one's pretty cut and dry. It's the old-fashioned bell curve based on our norming group of kiddos here. And again, I caution against using this for showing growth, because if at the beginning of the year you were in the 50th percentile and you make a nice steady year's growth, by the end of the year, where should you be? 50th percentile. Because when they give you the percentile rankings, it's for that time frame. That's why we have those testing windows, so that the scores are tied to that time frame. So just keep that in mind. If you're the 50th to begin with, you make a year's growth, you're going to be 50th at the end. So if you did want to use this one, just acknowledge the fact that there might not be movement in terms of that number. From my perspective, I'd like to see everyone below 50 close the gap, everyone above 50 maintain. It makes more sense that way that we're closing the gap, but do it with it as you will. An important thing to note is that the scaled scores are tied to percentile rankings, but there might be several scaled scores inside of each percentile ranking. So I have one student that's in the 22nd percentile with a 479. I can have another student in the 22nd percentile with a 484. So don't think, hey, I have different scaled scores, why are they in the same percentile ranking? That's because it's a band over here. The other thing to remember is that the scaled score is a static scale. Percentile ranking is going to change with time. So if I had a 484 at the beginning of the year, it might have been in the 22nd percentile. If I have a 484 at the end of the year, I'm probably going to be in like the 18, 17, 16 percentile ranking, because I failed to grow as the years progress. So just keep those things in mind. Even though they look like they go with each other, they change depending on the time of the year. Grade equivalencies, we talked about this one already. If you get a 5.6, does not mean they're reading at a 5th grade 6-month level. It's based off the norming group. It means the average 5th grade 6-month student in the norming group had the same score as your child.
That's different.
So it's really easy to say this is my grade equivalency. My kid's reading at a 5th grade 6-month level. It's not saying that by any means. Is it a close relationship? And maybe depending on the norming group. So what we really want to push people to do is use the score types in concert with one another. It's much more comprehensive that way. So we're going to do a little exercise here in your GT, so don't start throwing things at me because this is silly. It's good for us to do anyhow. So we're going to look at 3 different students, student A, B, and C, because we're that creative with their names. Their grades 3, 6, and 9. They all have the same scaled score, 635 in reading. Any ideas on what their grade equivalents or grade level equivalents might be?
Well, the 3rd grade, the student A would be a lot higher. Because they're different grades.
The grade equivalents all going to be the same because the 3rd grader is in 3rd grade, they are reading according to the norm reference at almost a 6th grade level. The 6th grade student is probably on level a little, and then it depends on what time of year the test was taken as well.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's if that's the fall one, then he would be right on target. If that is his score at the end of 6th grade going into 7th grade, then he's behind. And 9th grade is clearly reading a couple of years below grade level. It also depends on when the interim was given.
Right. So and you're 100% correct. So the scaled score is directly tied to the grade level equivalent. This does not change with time. So that's solid. But the percentile rate will. And then that's what you said. I just want to reiterate it because I'm going to pass it over to you guys now. What I want you to do is, since you have 3 tables, we're going to make 3 teams and see if we can guess what these percentile rates might be. For this exercise, it is the fall score. Just want to give you an idea of what the test is, because I don't think you guys got the STAR 101 training, so I did want to backtrack a little bit to give you some background. The reason why we ended up with STAR for elementary, as opposed to MAPS or some of those other systems that we were looking at, was it became really clear from the the IS is that they wanted something that was adaptive, and STAR is adaptive, meaning that if a child misses a question, the following question is going to be easier. If they get that question correct, the following question is going to be more difficult. The nice part about adapted tests is that typically, like when we use oral benchmarks, if the kids fell outside of their grade range, there's not a lot of content there. So the best way to put it is for GT and SPED, we're kind of left out in the dust. So either the kid knows everything we gave them and what else, I don't know. Or they didn't know anything we gave them, but what else did they, I don't know. So at grade level, it's really good. Outside of that, not so much. This is going to really help us with those kids that are outside of the box. So it'll continue to adjust up until we meet their zone of proximal development all the way up to high school, or it'll adjust down all the way down to kinder levels. So it's a really nice piece about this is it really fits our population of students well. This is just an example of how the test works. Each one of the dots represents an item. If it's red, it means they missed it. If it's purple, it means they got it right. So you can see as they miss it, they get easier in difficulty. So the amplitude of the dot tells you how difficult the item is. And that black line that flags it, that's the standard error of measure. So you can see it shrinks as the test goes on. So by the end of the assessment, number one, we don't have these massive fluctuations in questions difficulty. It really narrows in. And number two is that standard error of measure has shrunk way down. The really cool piece about this is the next time the child goes into the system to take the test, they don't start over here, they start over here. And we've already gone through those massive fluctuations, so the changes will be much more subtle. So I'm going to toggle back and forth between the two systems during our definitions and some of the other parts. I will do my best to acknowledge what system I'm talking about, but sometimes it gets a little easy to blur the two together. So if I miss it, look here or in the top left corner, we try to put the icons. We're going to start by talking about early literacy. So start early literacy, yes.
Should we already be locked in?
No.
Okay.
So start early literacy has a much more comprehensive piece, much better in terms of analyzing what skills the students need. The scores we get back from Start Reading aren't quite as robust. It's really important because if you have those kids that are transitioning and maybe fit into either one of the two systems, from my perspective as a teacher, I would want to get the diagnostic out of Start Early Literacy. So if they can take this assessment and meet their needs, meaning this is a type of reading level they're at, this is the better assessment in terms of the feedback you're going to get from the leaders. It starts by looking at 7 skill domains, and these are the 7 skill domains, and underneath each one of those there's a set of skill sets. And there's a total of 41 skill sets that it looks at. I'm going to jump back to this one. There's only 25 items on the assessment. So there's 41 skill sets that it's measuring in 25 items. So it's making some assumptions. So it's going to say if you can read words, you must know your alphabet. Okay? Or to say if you know, those kinds of assumptions. So they've done the work and they know if you know this, then you must know this. The prerequisite skills to whatever. So that's the kind of the nice piece. That's how it gets such a good in-depth analysis with so few questions. This one's in here just because a lot of people question whether or not it's really testing comprehension. And this is from the Renaissance Learning folks, not from me, so don't start throwing rocks at me on this one. They're studying background knowledge and vocabulary knowledge. The intersection, that's the meaning impacts, that's the comprehension piece. That's how they rationalize that this is a comprehension assessment. So what we want to do is take an early literacy test, but before I get you into the system, a couple things I want to remind you of. It's going to ask you those 5 questions beforehand. If you don't get 3 correct, it will not let you take the test. Okay? So make sure you get those correct. But after that, this is what I really would love you to do. Get some correct and see how it goes up in difficulty. Get some incorrect and see how it goes down in difficulty. But, did you want to do reading or early lit?
Early lit is
The hard part is you can't hear.
it's
Your speakers, if they don't play through it. So early literacy is audio. So you need the headphones really to take it correctly. If you want to take it early lit in here now, you got to turn up your speakers and it might be difficult. So I would suggest that you probably try to start reading because it's a click and you read it all. It'll work much better. So this is the website. If you have a Starlink on your computer already, don't use it. Please be sure to use this. The norm reference scores are going to exist only in Star Reading. Essentially, these are going to be your grade equivalencies. Because again, those grade equivalencies are not criterion reference. They're based on the Nordic population. That's how we decided what grade level equivalency to give a child. So it's not saying if this is their grade equivalency, it's saying students that were at this grade scored the same as your child. So now we're going to talk about Start Early Lit. We have our scaled scores, our proficiency scores, and our estimated ORF. And we'll talk more about how they came up with an estimated ORF, considering we're not sitting in front of them with a stopwatch, right? The scaled score, it's an absolute score. For Start Early Literacy, it's between 300 and 900. Be very, very careful, and I wish Andy was still here for this one. These scores do not break down grade level to grade level. So if you want to use scaled score to show a year's growth, you're going to have a real big problem because it's going to depend on where their starting point was for each individual kid. You're going to have to calculate it. It'll be a mess. So really, I would suggest highly against using scaled score to show growth in terms of trying to see who's made a year and wins. We have our proficiency scores. This is a nice piece because it has their 7 domains and those 41 skill sets that we talked about. And I'll show you a really nice report that breaks this down and makes more sense of this in a minute. And then we have the estimated ORF again, and we'll talk more about that. We have the literacy classifications. These are all familiar. Emergent reader, which is broken down into early and late emergent, our transitional reader, and our probable reader. And the nice part about the slide is it shows you the score breakdowns for the scaled score for each one of those classifications. Here's the same thing, but kind of on a timeline instead. So you can see where they fall in on that 600-point scale. This is the nice piece now. So this is the report that makes Start Early Literacy the superstar. We get, here's each one of the skill or the literacy domains gets its own little box with its skill sets that fall underneath that domain. Remember, there's a total of 41 skill sets. The nice piece about this is the scores are broken down into 3 categories. So it's a 100-point scale they're looking at here for the skill set score, and it's 0 through 39. Means the child is now ready to be taught the skill yet. 40 to 75 means they're ready to learn. 76 to 100 means they're approaching mastery. So the nice part about this is like the old benchmarks, where it's say your kid's deficit in all these areas, and the teachers go, I don't know where to begin. This says everything below a 76 they're deficit in, but if it's below a 39, they're not ready for it. There's some prereqs that they need first. So when we look at a section like here, we can see, hey, blending word parts, this is phonemic awareness. My kid got a 78. They're approaching mastery. I don't need to worry about that for this particular kiddo. Identifying missing sounds, they got a 38. They're getting killed on this one. But guess what? They're not ready for this yet. Because before we can identify missing sounds, we've got to be able to identify rhyming words. So if I can't identify a rhyming word, there's no way I'm going to be able to identify a missing sound. So I know this is where I need to concentrate on, not this. That's the important piece about the progress monitoring.
So those are ordered, right?
Yes. So the nice piece about this is if I want to do a small group lesson for all the kids that need the rhyming words on Wednesdays for 2 weeks, then I can have the kids take this assessment again and see who's moved out of this category into approaching mastery here. I can start working on the next piece, identifying missing sounds for that group. So we're really talking about narrowing it down to the kiddo, narrowing it down to the skill set, and being able to do some really powerful small group stuff. That's the power of this one. This is why the 5th grade kiddo that's reading at the 2nd grade level needs to take this assessment. Any questions on this piece? This is the best part of those.
So they get a printout for each kid of one of these?
Yes. And mind you, this we're only looking at 1, 2, 3.5 of 7 domains on this. I mean, the full report has all 7 domains, multiple pages, it shows all the different skill sets. Those blue arrows are telling you what your child is ready to learn.
And he can show you if there's a class version of it as well. It brings the students for each skill.
Which is really nice because then you can see what do I need to teach whole group, what do I need to teach small group. Beyond that, I can also get my small groups from there as well. So really powerful tool, should save teachers a ton of time and really helping increase the student movement through the literacy process, or whatever you want to call it. So now we're going to talk about Start Reading.